Hello and welcome to the DoodleCast. I am Nicholas Greibel and I am in the studio today with Eric Shumake. He is a local artist. Kind of, I would consider him a Denver classic. But I'll let him tell us about himself. So
Nice.
Yeah.
I do feel a bit like a Denver classic, or, classic Denver. I've been around here a little while. Kind of got started with Rule Gallery around the year 2000. And I've been causing trouble ever since.
Awesome, man. And what sort of stuff do you like to do mostly?
I do a variety of art. I do some painting. I do some sort of political activism, conceptual art, ranting on Facebook. Yeah.
No, you were part of the group that did the sweeps, right? Back when they were doing the homeless sweeps, you guys would go and do the lay-ins at the sweep.
Yeah, we did a piece called The Big Sweep where it was under the Klaus Oldenburg sculpture.
Yeah.
At the Denver Art Museum, and 30 or so of us piled up in a big pile in front of it to protest the actual homeless sweeps that are still being conducted in Denver by the highly questionable Hancock administration. And, they're violating basic constitutional rights of homeless folks, and Denver made the list of top 5 worst cities for their policies on the homeless. And I couldn't just sit on the couch. So we made what was essentially a giant political cartoon to try to shame the administration, but apparently that's not an effective tactic because it may be that this administration has no shame.
Shame. Yeah, it's definitely kind of weird. Bridging that gap kind of behind social commentary and into making work, because as an artist, when you say something, you're not usually taking that seriously, right? It's an interesting thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, in a way, it's a protection too, right?
Yeah.
Art and satire, comedy is a last refuge of democracy. I'm a pretty old man here. I remember when George Bush was taking us into the Gulf War, and none of us wanted it to happen, and the media just went right along with it, and weapons of mass destruction, and the only bastion of journalism was The Daily Show with Jon Stewart,
right.
Colbert, and they could do it because they were taking refuge in comedy, satire, right? So you can say things that are otherwise difficult truths through art, through metaphor, through humor especially, and that's certainly, can be a benefit, but also it can be trivialized. Yeah, that's a risk.
For sure. And one of the other things that you did that I really liked was those portraits under the bridges and stuff, all along the creek.
Yeah, I did
cool concept.
Thanks. I'm highly caffeinated too, so my apologies there.
Yeah, me too. Shot in the dark makes jittery lines.
So the Cherry Creek Bridge project was this idea that I had where, I saw in the news that there was folks who'd complained because they had seen, some homeless, drug addicts shooting up along the Cherry Creek Bridge. And, I can see that there's a cause for concern because of the way we seem to, sort of view the homeless, right? So it's more of a cultural problem in that they're seen instead of as victims or as people who are suffering from an illness who need help. They're often seen as dehumanized or sources of crime, and not as people.
Yeah.
And this is the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver that I'm setting on fire here. We'll get to that in a little bit.
I feel like I've had a dream where that happened.
Yeah. And because the original context, I think, of getting down, sitting down here is the concept of art washing.
Yeah, because honestly something very near and dear to me. I miss all the crazy warehouse spaces and really just the freedoms that a lot of the art scene used to have, and the ability to just do it for the craft, you know? That used to be something that was very present and accessible that is kind of going under the woodwork. And there's so many aspects of that. So I got a weird question for you with that. So the reason why I like the Bridge project is it was kind of reclaiming a concept, because one of the things with art washing that I think is kind of a nuanced topic, and a lot of people kind of shy away from talking about, especially artists, because a lot of them, it's their bread and butter, but the aspects of mural work. And to me, like, the Bridge concept was kind of like reverting the idea of mural work, because we see murals put up in spaces that used to be studios or used to be like public spaces for community. And it's like the city being like, oh yeah, we like art, but there's no artist here. We just put art on here.
Right. So there's so many different levels of this concept of art washing. And, you know, broadly speaking, it's sort of the liberal justification, the left's version of validating capitalism and the mechanisms of it, you know. And before anybody gets too excited about, you know, critiquing capitalism, it doesn't mean that we do away with economic systems or the exchange of goods and services.
Yeah.
We just don't structure that vital, you know, function of civilization on a policy of greed, of capitalizing, right?
What?
So, you know, yes, people can still have their TVs and, you know, SUVs and whatever, but just that, you know, history shows that every failed civilization has left behind a cautionary tale of unfettered greed. You know, Mesopotamia, the disciples of Manon, you know, Manon was essentially the Mesopotamian god of the bottom line, right? And that they collapsed from, you know, at least many analysis from economic overreach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's everybody. It's just, it depends on what your economic system is, because it's like, as far as like those great empires go, it's like their economic system was subjugating people, literally, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was just like, because I was watching something with my girlfriend last night, and it was like this hypnotist. I think it was like some weird Australian like TV drama or something that I like stumbled upon. But this like hypnotist was like hypnotizing people and like stealing things from them, you know, and he could like hypnotize people on the spot. And I was like, that's an amazing superpower if you could do that.
Right.
You can just convince people to do whatever you want, and all you got to do is hypnotize them a little bit. And I was like, oh, that would be crazy if people could do that. And then my girlfriend just turns to me and she's like, that's what government does.
Exactly, right?
It's like, oh yeah,
and you know, so in a bit collusion with capitalism, right? So this is a hack attempt here at the Denver Art Museum, and what I've noticed is there's a process of this the ethos of capitalism, because money is this sort of universal exchange of sort of energy, of value, that, you know, it infects all these institutions, right? So it's infected journalism. They're, you know, now slave to the 24-hour cable news cycle. Dan Rather said that it used to be boring and credible, and now news is exciting and incredible, right? You know, teaching, you know, I taught at the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, or I was gallery teaching curator there, and for the galleries, and then I also taught for a couple of years at the Naropa Institute in Boulder. Yeah. And both of those originally quite laudable, you know, ventures have been utterly compromised by the bottom line. You know, when RimCAD the week they got bought by Full Sail, I resigned because I knew what was going to happen. And a year later, the rest of the meaningful core staff resigned in protest as well.
Yeah. That's another aspect of art washing that I think you have a very good perspective on, is like the educational aspect of it, even. Like the dichotomy that's created between like people that go into it and are paying, to get into doing art, but at the same time, like, I think it's a very common thing when you meet people that do art. It's like a lot of them will be like, I should have just gone out and done it,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's because of exactly that, like the reasons why we're doing it and the reasons why people are going into it aren't necessarily for the craft or any other reason than the money involved.
Right, and so then it's making baubles for the rich. It's this idea of in a way validating the worst parts of capitalism, because a museum, like, let's take the Museum of Contemporary Art. It tries to decontextualize. A museum tries to be this ethereal. I mean, in London, they literally call it a white cube, right? As if this idea of Western civilization, this is somehow the primary, basis of the Western metaphor, right? And it's supposed to decontextualize the object. Does that make sense? Like, you take something and it's supposed to put it in this ethereal non-space, if you will, right? Yeah. There is no more highly contextual space, I would argue, than the most expensive real estate in freaking Manhattan, taking a room and having a giant empty room with a bunch of lights and all focused on one particular object. That's hugely contextual. Yeah. The society says, this is what we perceive as the basis of value. We own it, and you're lucky because we give you one free day a month.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so the message from museums is not necessarily that progressive.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of what our culture does, and, like, I hate to, like, say media, but media does, is that it does a very good job of being disassociative as possible,
How do you mean?
Well, it was exactly what you were just talking about. Like, we create disassociations within just the day-to-day functioning of people and the way we establish things. Because I also think that institutionally, when it comes to sharing ideas and things like that, you can't really just, like, arbitrarily say, like, this is how it is, And I think a lot of what comes down to it is there's not really this willingness to listen to the actual climate, in a lot of those settings. Because the actual conversation is separated from that climate.
Right, a sense of dissociation across the board, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the way people are listening to us talk, we've got headphones on. We're two people sitting literally across the table. I'm hearing you through microphones that are going through another room, all this equipment. And so it's a different type of sort of multivalent communication. There's the conversation that I'm having with you, the conversation I'm having to the perceived audience, the separate sideline conversation I'm having in my own head to myself as I talk. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's the cool thing about consciousness. I mean, as a little bit of a tangent, is it can take a lot of different shapes. And so we should take that kind of plasticity and apply it maybe to some of society's problems.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Like, I feel a need for a disclaimer as I sort of do these really, really bad drawings that, this is not in any way advocating actual arson, right? It should go without saying that this is a metaphorical critique in the, sort of category of political cartoons, and that, the fire of wisdom, there's sort of the whole, liar, liar, pants on fire, London Bridge is burning. All of these sort of metaphorical references, but, when conservatives run into this, Arthur, I believe, no, it was Dave Hickey made this point, the critic Dave Hickey. He said that back in the day when I was a kid, they made Tom and Jerry cartoons. They used to be violent, like Itchy and Scratchy, on The Simpsons. And there was some move to make them peaceful, right? And it ruined the cartoon. And the whole point is that the reason a cartoon is funny is because real life is not, right? The cartoon is funny when a mouse runs over a cat, because in real life that sucks, right? And that humans have the ability to distinguish, but that also ties into, like, Bertolt Brecht's Threepenny Opera, where, think kind of sprockets on Saturday Night Live, like Touch My Monkey, right? the idea of making an aesthetic deliberately alienating so that it's not mistaken for truth.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas anytime you have a totalitarian government or like like Soviet socialist realism, what was it? The communist China. They all had this similar aesthetic of a stylized heroic realism.
Yeah.
And so watching, that's sort of the danger, is when the metaphors become, indistinguishable from metaphors. That's when people start to, that's when folks who don't have the exposure to discerning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's, where'd all these fascists come from? Oh, they were always there. They just, they had somebody be like, yeah, what you think is real. And then they're like, oh, yeah, it's real. And it's like, well, here we are.
Yeah. A certain confirmation bias. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like getting scared of our own shadow, and then, oh God, it's chasing us, so it must be real. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's interesting because like the whole thing with comedy is it is based off of fear. Like that's what people don't get about comedy, is it really is like just a different reaction to fear. Some people react violently, and some people are like, oh, why am I even worried? Like,
yeah, it creates a space where there's no space. Yeah, comedy can be. Dave Chappelle said it really well. I think he said, differences are a great thing to laugh about. It's just no damn reason to hate somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but so it's this idea of externalizing our own fear and projecting outwardly things that we need to be facing inwardly.
Yeah.
I think I might try to. I'm gonna do a really bad sketch of my buddy Adam Lerner here.
Yeah.
I definitely consider him a friend, and I have to say, for he, to his credit, he will always listen to different viewpoints. I don't always agree with the decisions he makes, but he does at least make a good effort to, and I feel sincerely, entertain a lot of the different viewpoints.
Yeah.
But I do have to, yes, call him out as one of the, primary exponents of art washing in Denver. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, it's hard because I honestly think a lot of it isn't even necessarily intentional. Because I was talking about like the mural thing, and it's like I have a lot of buddies that do mural gigs. Like that's predominantly what they do. It's their bread and butter. So I can't really be like, oh, what you're doing is messed up. But it is interesting because it's like you don't know. That's the whole thing. It's just a lack of care, I think, at this point.
And I think some of it's also the environment. He lives in a bit of a siloed environment, right? And there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of the sort of the fawning and the social pressure, which I think is a bit embarrassing. But it seems to be a strategy. That the way things look for him, when he gets involved in all of the pressures, he's meeting the payroll and he's got to keep the donors happy, and there's a lot going on there. There's always less control. When I was the times I've been a curator or gallery director, the thing that I've always, I suppose, surprised and resented the most is how much folks, how much power folks think that that curators or gallery folks have. So give them a little room in general.
Yeah.
But also, there's a long-term pattern, I think, with the museum where it's, it's a bit tone deaf, I think, as to how, the actual gentrification that has been caused by, the addition of the development there, right? The Falcones. I mean, to his credit, he's, there's a sort of high level. There's he's helping Denver kind of keep pace with the growth in other cities, and he's doing, some interesting sort of developments with an eye towards the kind of new urbanism, but also I think it's all happened across the board at the expense of the homeless population, and I feel like I'm almost responsible because early on I helped with that that process. I helped gentrify, first Lodo and then the Baker neighborhood, and and so that's part of my mess that I keep trying to clean up.
Yeah, the Baker neighborhood just blows my mind every time I'm down there. One of my buddies, my buddy Matt, he always refers to it as South Broadway now.
Nice.
It's like, oh my God.
Right?
Because it's like, like 5 or 6 years ago, whoa, that was a totally different neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I mean, in 1999, I mean, we call it, Old Denver.
yeah.
And New Denver is something that happened around, I don't know, 2007. It kind of snuck up. It was like a smell that just kept getting. No, I'm kidding, but it was the architecture, I think.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's one of the things is the dam. Like that architect, if you go anywhere in Europe, they did not let him build buildings in France.
Right, Liebeskind was a total, it was a total fluke. He was here with the cowboy hat. I mean, that whole pandering was a bit ridiculous, and surprisingly, the architecture works as a sculptural object in the architectural space. It just makes a horrible place to try to show any art. Right? It could be turned into an education center, and they could build, a space that's more conducive. And I do have to say, the Museum of Contemporary Art does get some kudos for it, having a LEED certified building designed by David Adjaye. Definitely put in some early votes for that guy, and that building's panning out well. Sorry, David Adjaye, I know you are not watching this, but I didn't do your building justice. It is a pretty building. Sorry, I had to set it on fire. I think, how is it? It's sort of, how do you separate the art from the art washing, right? So in places where art is used to, it's sort of another form of metaphorical kind of tokenism, right?
Yeah.
Of, creativity has to be sort of, reined in. Especially there's a plaque from the Holocaust Museum that, and I won't do it justice, but the signs of totalitarianism, right? And so, one of them was an attack on creativity and art in general, right? And they called it the degenerate art.
Those, and
which was like the coolest fucking art show in history.
Yeah,
right?
So many people went to that.
Like, if you could curate like all the badasses at the time.
No, it was really funny because it was exactly like that, and it was so backfired. Like I think the Hitler's regime tried to put on a classic art show at the same time, and nobody went to it.
Yeah.
And people from all over Europe were like, "Let's go to the degenerate art show."
Nice.
I think most people ignored the graffiti on the walls.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Nice.
They were like, "Oh, I can think for myself."
Right. Yeah, and it's a little bit close to where we're at today, huh?
Yeah. Oh my God.
A little bit scary. So, I do apologize. I'm gonna have to set you on fire here, Adam. And it's this idea of, I look at on their Facebook page, they promote these $400 a plate dinners, whatever else, and it's part of it's fundraising, but it's still a pretty expensive dinner, right? So why not just give all the money, to the cause, rather than promote this sort of vanity where it's basically a vehicle for wealthy people to assuage their guilt by saying, I know I'm super rich, but look, it's cool. I'm being, kind of, I'm having this sort of pseudo fame, or, how do we say this? This almost this sense of patronage, right? It's this whole, there's the job creators, and then there's like the culture givers, or so it's, I think sometimes because it's on the left, we don't look at it, but it's almost utterly the same process.
Yeah. It's definitely, and there is this question of like, how do you deal with it? Because it's also like, it's not like a lot of people that care really have the resources to throw at it. But it's also like, how do you get people to think about this without feeling like attacked or, and honestly, I might personally be at a point where I don't think it matters.
Well, I think that what was the post that you responded to for the invitation? It said I have no interest in the art, art, contemporary art, useless capitalist art washing. Like, yeah, I think like everybody else, people are starting to not pay attention to it because it's increasingly irrelevant, right? It fortunately, I'm not worried about art, just the institutions that sort of hijack it, right? It's the same way terrorists hijack Islam or Christianity.
Yeah.
A lot of times the institutions hijack, art and the sense of art, and they make it difficult for artists to think or operate independently, and then the sort of economic pressure. There's no way to be an artist. Like the economic message is, if you want to be an artist, that's cool. You're gonna die miserable like Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's still that archetype.
Well, it's like one of the things that I personally run into is you ever try explaining to somebody doing something just for the craft? It's like with the average, when you try to do that with the average person, it's impossible, because if somebody does, that's not their motivation, they literally do not get it or
Right.
have like the capacity to. Like it's because it is definitely a cultural disconnect for sure.
Well, so interesting. But then there are things that they do value. There are mental ideas or patterns that they do value, right?
Yeah, they're really good at picking stats for fantasy football or
Okay. Well, so
their
I mean,
job,
so then they would appreciate the craft of somebody throwing a great spiral on a, Hail Mary pass for a touchdown. And I do. This is another one that's very unpopular with some of my sort of art world friends. But there's no more inherent meaning in the Mona Lisa than there is in, Jordan sinking a free throw to win the game, right?
Absolutely.
They're arbitrary things that humans assign meaning to, and there's a lot of people who would be fine their whole lives without art.
Yeah.
Right? Not their thing, cool, and there shouldn't be a bias towards, art, the downwardly mobile sort of space of art in classical history is something that folks might need to get over, or more to the point is dig deeper and show the power of art, because it's resilient, but it does take a lot of either hard work or very deep insight, which often takes a lot of inner work just to be able to see, separate our own maybe bias and things like that.
Well, I think what it is with like a lot of things that are more common and available in the culture. There's like this inherent bias in the culture where, yeah, it's like if something is perceived as expressive, it suddenly becomes less interesting, And I've always wondered about that, like why is that?
So if something's perceived, because emotions get a bad rap, and because emotions are associated with femininity and
it's just like self-awareness. Like, why is that a problem? And that's like the whole thing with it. Is it's like, for me, when I go to explain somebody why I would do something for the love of the craft, they'll understand the love of craft as long as the craft doesn't inherently involve self-awareness. A lot of times.
No, especially if it doesn't involve self-awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's damn it, I watch TV, and there's this commercial for a show coming on, and anyway, it doesn't matter the show, but somebody was saying, hey, why watch this program? You don't learn anything. And the other kid's like, this is TV. You're not supposed to learn anything.
Yeah. This is escapism. Get out of here.
Right? And so what's weird is that sometimes I think that there's I'm puzzled as to why in human languages we have one word for two entirely different things, right?
Right.
Like love or truth. Like, love, there's love, right, which is entirely supporting someone, giving them freedom, being the, proverbial wind beneath their wings. And then there's this idea of like ownership or attachment, right? And most of us, it's probably 80%, attachment, and maybe 20% love. right? But we say, oh, we're in love, right?
Yeah, I have this this obsession with the etymology of ancient Greek, specifically with reference to that concept. Is in ancient Greek, where we get the word have, has, had, to have, whatever from, is this word has, which does not mean you own anything. It means you are in the presence of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and they only Latin totally distorted that word. They were like, no, this is about possession now. You silly Greeks. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah, and then it even carries into our modern language with the way we say have, and then also in Latin, like ave and all that stuff. It's very crazy because it's like you can see where the culture kind of shifted. They were like, well, we'd rather possess things than accept being in the presence of them.
Interesting.
We'd rather be possessed than be present.
And why do you think, what was the perceived advantage of that?
Well, to me, it was just all of a sudden you have this dominating system within that culture where that old adage that we still to this day carry very hard, possession is 9/10 of the law.
Right.
Like, there you have it.
Interesting, because that kind of knits into this idea I have about sort of control addiction.
Yeah.
As kind of a defining ethos of the West, that, you know, we're all very familiar with this idea of escape addiction, right?
Yeah.
So people either who, you know, want have the medical addiction, you know, but sort of choose to escape or you choose to avoid. It's particularly vilified in people who don't want to work or be productive. The unemployed are in a way sort of dehumanized in the narrative. Sorry, my drawing made me kind of jump the rails there, but you know, the sort of the value of somebody's production. I don't. What was where were we?
we were talking about the difference between like possession and presence, and
control addiction,
in the culture,
and escape addiction. Thank you.
Yeah.
So pardon my addiction to escaping there as I wandered off in thought, but control addiction is addiction to money or power or to work or to anything that's going to try to control the outside environment. So we have two strategies. You know, there's either to escape or control, and if our strategy is sort of internalized, then we're looking to escape, right?
Yeah.
And if we're looking to externalize, then it's control. Donald Trump's brother died at age 40 of alcohol addiction.
Whoa.
And that is, you know, bad, and he, you know, that's a sad story. What's interesting is that Donald Trump's brother did far less harm to humanity than Donald Trump's control addiction, right? So the same addictive pattern, the same need to have some kind of sense of security in a insecure world, and his brother directed it inwardly and hurt himself, which is tragic. Donald Trump's directed it outwardly, and all of the people, if you line up you know, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, I mean, they're all control addicts, raging out of control.
Oh, that dude is such a monster. Like, for years, too. It's like people are acting like this is like a new thing. It's like, dude, Joe Arpaio has been terrorizing Mexican people in Arizona for more than a decade.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's a rise, or that he's being validated, or the fact that he was pardoned, I mean, that's Trump weaponizing the pardon, you know, and he tested to see whether he could get away with it, and somehow he did, right? So it's a very dangerous situation. He now knows he can do that and get away with that, and so you have a presidency that has a precedent of being, you know, that's not pardoning someone for something that's, you know, I mean, that he willfully defied other branches of government and the Constitution. And so pardoning those kind of offenses and getting away with it is frankly, it's quite clearly unconstitutional, and it's also incredibly dangerous sign of fascism and a departure from the rule of law, not...
Yeah, it's like, that's like the whole thing about like that whole strong man and like strong law thing is it's really the opposite. Is what it always turns into, and I don't get how people haven't picked up on that yet. There's so much history of it. goofy.
Yep. As a projection of cowardice, it's sort of like, when does a dog gets scared and it barks a lot, but that's just a dog that's barking. I don't know. but we seem to be like, that must be true because I don't know.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Because it's a old white dude in a suit. I don't know. What the fuck?
Yeah, he used to have a weird lyric. It was like, the Halliburton monoliths, they cut to the sky. Ain't no reason worrying. Ain't no reason to wonder why. There'll already be a white man in a black suit with a red tie. He'd say, I'd explain his son, but ain't no point in trying.
That sounds like it's in the tradition of kind of the Guthries there, the old folk tradition. Yeah?
Yeah.
You get any influence there?
Oh, absolutely. I'm honestly, I'm more of a Leadbelly than a Guthrie's guy, but that's just because, Leadbelly, man.
Cool.
Speaking of pardons, get a pardon with a song. That's the way to do it.
Right? Was that his story?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think Leadbelly got out of prison 3 times by playing a song, and that's like the mythos behind the song Midnight Special.
Nice.
Said he got out of jail for murder with it.
Well, I don't know if I condone that, but hey. I mean, I think, there's this interesting sort of, thing that happens where we sort of start, or stop trusting our friends, our neighbors, and that, everybody kind of takes their position and just almost gets in sort of a culture like a fighting mood, we got to do everything to prevent that from happening,
Yeah.
And I know that that might sound privileged, and it is to a lot of folks, but it's also, as Malcolm X said, if nonviolence only works if your enemy has a conscience. But I'm also very sort of cautious about, losing. The most important thing to protect, I think, is our own sense of peace, right? Because once that's gone, then it's gone in the world.
Well, it's the only reason we're really doing it for. Like, I think that we're actually at a point in history, and this is about as bleak as I get. It's optimistic nihilism. Hello. I think that we're literally at a point in history, mother the necessity of invention. We have no choice really but to be solution oriented at this point, or so stop existing. I really think that's our future that we're looking at. Like, if we don't fix the problems, we never will.
Right, and maybe maybe global warming unites the the human ant farm as we try to save ourselves from the flooding garden.
Right.
I mean, one can hope, right?
Hey, God will protect us, and I'll build me a big old boat, and I'm gonna float with all the animals. And then there's gonna be weird people that even after archaeologists proved it was impossible, that will try to find evidence of my existence.
I think one of the great things about life is that in 100 years nobody's gonna give a fuck.
Right.
But that's sort of our personal whatever, right? Because the people who are around are going to, and if there's no oxygen or if there's no whatever. So I think it's that time perspective gives us sort of a context to worry less about ourselves, because no matter what we do, it's not going to matter 100 years from now, and kind of worry more about what we're leaving behind, because it's going to matter to folks who might as well be us, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, probably sort of are us, that we're all, this conversation, this, consciousness doesn't happen with an individual, right? It's my voice and whoever's listening to it, your voice. As we talk, it's a co-creation.
Yeah. Well, and it's the other part of it is hey, you're a human, right? I'm a human. Guess what? The only thing we're ever gonna know is human experience. Like, it's not like we're gonna wake up 1,000 years from now as a species and be like, you know what? I know what it's like to be a tree. No, you know what it's like to die and be consumed by a tree. You don't know what the tree is feeling, though.
I certainly think that there's that level to reality, that we're us once. There's only, one of us that happens in one historical moment, and then that does die forever, right?
Yeah.
But also within that, if you look at consciousness, right? My consciousness, as we've talked about how many different subjects, right? Going around all different places, past, future, civilizations, different people, concepts. Like, the mind can go anywhere, right? It becomes whatever that it's placed upon, yeah?
Yeah.
And so in a similar manner, I feel like there's also, while there's a very specific finite aspect to experience, that there's also sort of a universal, complete aspect to that as well.
No, how I view it is, I think of the brain as like this computer that has insane capacity for memory, but has like literally no processing power whatsoever. Just like really none.
I like that.
Like, that's why we made computers to do all the processing of the things for us. Is like, we're just like, fuck, I can't fucking do this. Like,
well, and we because it takes effort, we willingly seed it, right?
Yeah.
So, the advent of the television makes a certain form of national connectivity more possible, but that was at the loss of people sitting on their front porch in the evening.
right.
The automobile connected us because we could drive distances and from town to town or from coast to coast, which is good. But then also we became so obese that sometimes, folks have trouble getting out the door. So every technology, while it has a certain kind of benefit, it can also, every one seems to have kind of a potential drawback.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, in the realm that, we're kind of living in, like, the world of art, obsolescence, like, things becoming obsolete is, like, part of the environment of art. Like, I don't know, this is, like, something that I kind of, like, obsess over a little bit, because when you make a print, that's an outdated medium. Mm-hmm. That's been an outdated medium for almost a century, like...
Absolutely.
Like, the second they started making web presses, like, you could just have a giant roller and just print millions of the thing with, like, little to no skill. Like, you literally just fill an inkwell and make little stamps. And you have a machine that does it for you. Crazy. Like, so then it's like, why would you carve a wood board and pull a print off of it still? Why would you do that? Because it's cool. It's part of who we are. But, like, at the same time, because it's also, like, you could argue that photography made painting obsolete, and...
Well, I think photography made painting better. It saved it from the freaking Academy, right?
Yeah.
Academy was trying to turn it into photography, and photography came along and did it more scientifically, more objectively, which was also in vogue. And instead of going in a corner and dying, art split into, impressionism and expressionism, which, again, was either examining the external, physics of perception or the internal emotional landscape of expression.
Yeah.
So, art, you can't kill art. It's one of those forces like Kali or, the vengeful sort of teeth mother metaphors, and that's why I always sort of, there's a tremendous pain to artists or people who like the idea of art and then want to rest their identity on that. Yeah. Because honestly, there was a whole period of art where I was like, I'm anything but an artist. Like, don't just call me whatever you want. Do not call me a fucking artist, because that is, seems like such a, entitled sort of head trip of, like, I don't know. I mean,
if you actually do art, it's like, what does that even mean? Like,
right.
Oh, you're an artist? What you do embroidery? Do you you know, like there's so many things, and most people that do art are usually multifaceted about it. It's not like you're, if somebody's just like, I am just a painter or I am just a this thing, I find it a little questionable. Yeah.
Right. Well, and because such a reductive sort of labeling is kind of absurd, right? In the face of reality. And there was and I'm not remembering his name right now. I don't think it was Piketty, but there was a European economist who basically said that one of the primary mechanisms of the two mechanisms of maintaining capitalism, especially a very unequal form of it, are private security and job titles. And that job titles, in America, like what do you do, and your earning is really part of the primary evaluation of your identity, your value, your manliness, or with women, there's a misogyny to even exist in the sphere, right? Yeah. So it's a whole lot of horse shit, and they sell it, and then we internalize it, and I mean, surveillance devices, we talk about it being sort of, Orwellian, but it's a bit more Huxleyan, right? So in a brave new world, like, we're now lining up to pay for the new iPhone that's fucking surveilling us and selling our, very, like, like our DNA makes up who we are, right? Well, our sort of information fingerprint in the world makes up who we are as much as our thermodynamic physical body. At this point, and so the fact that that's just being sort of harvested without any regulation or consequence is absurd and terrifying, but it's also unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because it's going to infect the very markets that are trying to control it.
Right, because, we're talking about how, like, the domain of art takes on the outdated, but that's how technology works. And what happens when this information becomes this outdated thing that people are just playing with? It all falls apart.
You mean the relevancy of the information?
Yeah, but also, like, even the form and format. I honestly think that the way that we store information, in my lifetime, it's changed so rapidly that I really can't imagine it being completely different within, like, 20 years, Like, I even think computing will be a completely different thing than we can even really imagine, because it's like the growth in the technology is so exponential.
The Kurzweilian singularity, yes?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I was raised by science people, so I'm, like, very skeptical of artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't totally refute it. My whole thing is I don't really believe in AI or the singularity, as in, like, I think it's that, because it's not like the machines are ever going to 100% take control of the directives they are given. We will always be giving them the directive. But I think that the way the machine will compute and interpret that directive will change, and it'll probably be based more off of logic and efficiency than unity,
Gotcha.
It's kind of like a vague way to put it, but to me, I totally believe that a form of singularity will happen in my lifetime, but I don't think it'll be so sci-fi. It'll be probably incredibly boring.
Gotcha. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Sometimes the sea changes are not seismic, and often that's a sign that they are, sort of massive changes. I'm trying to do a Baroque picture frame here if my audience is puzzled. I like the optimism there. I fear otherwise.
Yeah.
That I don't know, but yeah, I don't think it's necessarily either extreme, right? So I think it may go rogue in a few ways. I don't think that will necessarily supplant civilization, or if it does, we'll find ways to accommodate. So it'll be a mix of some stuff going a little bit maybe off the rails. I mean, there's cases of AI, what was it, the market crash about 10 years ago, where the automated trading robots, all went haywire and crashed the market, right?
Yeah.
And so just, unexpected, dumb sort of things that happen at scale that we don't anticipate, I think, are going to be some of the offshoots of AI, right? That if it's all of a sudden in charge of driving traffic, maybe some kind of weird ghost gets in the algorithm and all of a sudden, 700 cars smashed together on the LA freeway, right? Because something crashed or everything thought it was right, or, I don't know. Well, maybe possible, maybe not. Yeah.
Like, for me, it's... I don't know. My dad actually he is a professor at Mines, and this is kind of his field. And
School of Mines?
Yeah. So when I put a lot of those stories up against the Turing test.
Yeah.
That's why I'm skeptical. I don't think that we actually really have technically AI. But we do have things that are bordering on it, which is definitely very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, as much as one would be afraid of artificial intelligence, I'm currently pretty scared of human intelligence too. If you kind of look at world events, So one or the other. But as long as we can start making some collectively sensible decisions as humanity,
right.
So, the Mona Lisa, this is not, but on fire it shall be.
Dang, that Mona Lisa's fire, cuz.
And there it is.
My girl Mona is lit. There's that just makes me think of that Big Sean song. Now everybody's gonna know I'm really stupid. Moaning Lisa. Lisa moaning.
I'm trying to think of what would the J-Lo sort of benefer be for the Mona Lisa. Molo. Yeah. I think we'll just leave that one right there. I like this R&B we got in the background.
Oh yeah.
The power of music too.
It's kind of funny because that's really my background. That's what I grew up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because it's like visual mediums or even writing. It's not as collaborative of a medium. Traditionally, before we invented recording, music doesn't exist unless somebody hears it, homie. You can write a score, but it's a pretty esoteric art. It's not like there's ever, and I even think even in the modern age, there's not a lot of people interpreting scores.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's definitely kind of interesting. Because it's when I got into art, I'm like, why do you hide paintings in the back of your apartment? Don't people need to see that for it to exist? And they're like, no, man, it just exists. I can leave it here for 1,000 years and it'll still exist.
Yeah, well, so then what do you think is it sounds like you feel like there's a necessary social element to creating art?
I mean, just because I come from more of a performance background, that's always kind of something ingrained in me. But that's also why I like visual art, is because it doesn't need to be social at all. But at the same time, it absolutely can be. Yeah, it's weird. Because to me, they're art is art. It doesn't matter if you call it music, writing, whatever. Art is art, whatever the medium or form. But I think that to me, I break it down as there are two modes to art. There is art that needs to relate to a person in real time, actual time. So like a lot of performance-based stuff kind of falls into that category, but you can do it with writing or visual art. You can read a poem, you can do a live painting, you know. But yeah, it's interesting. And then there's this modality of art that is what I refer to it as like archival art. So it's like literally things that I could leave in a box underground and nobody could see it for hundreds of years. But then they could find it and relate to it and see it, and it exists. And that's like, to me, that's like, visual art is probably one of the best outlets for that, but I also think that's kind of how writers operate too.
Yeah, and and then so there's this idea of outliving mortality, of, you know, proving our worth as human, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I've got a friend whose opinion I highly respect, and he's just kind of like, yeah, you know, art, I mean, like, right, it's not that creativity in and of itself is bad. It's just like actually, you know, separating it from every activity, right? Because there's the creative energy simply in sitting and looking at the sky, right? Simply in having a conversation, a cup of tea, you know. So I think creativity is one of those words that's a little dangerous, like nature.
Yeah.
You know, nature, I was always sort of like, well, you know, can a nuclear power plant be unnatural, right? Because we invented it and we evolved, and so like where, you know, nature never really made sense as to where it showed up as a separate concept. And I realized after much pondering, probably pondered this through my 20s, and then I realized that you know, nature, the word nature itself is the wedge. Having a separate concept is insane.
Yeah.
Right? And so the word nature, which seems like a useful thing, which we would covet and, you know, put on logos in green with leaves, and, you know, it's a wonderful thing, but actually it's the very thing that is separating us from something we cannot be separated from.
Yeah. Well,
and it allows us to do all the things that we do to something that is not us.
Yeah, it gets back to that whole idea of, are you escaping or are you projecting? You know?
Yes,
like,
right.
Yeah.
Ah, nice.
And those are the two modes of art.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, right.
Like, performing is totally projecting. Like, you need to be projecting onto somebody, and then the other form is escape, you know?
Nice, yeah. And, you know, in watching, like in Macbeth, with the play within a play, Shakespeare actually plays on that multivalent sort of thing, you know, where it's like it's a more or less, it's an escape, a diversion, but that's also something that's actually telling quite directly the truth of the murder.
Yeah.
Interesting. Ah, the bard.
I am but a bear tied at the stake. I might have had that last monologue memorized at some point.
Nice. I think in grade school I played Osiric, so I had a variable hit. That was my entire line in Macbeth.
Yeah.
So good thing I went with art. Maybe.
Right. Let me check the time real quick. So it's looking like about 2. Okay. So we are getting kind of close to wrapping up the show here.
Cool.
And yeah, I really just have one plug, because it's my compadres that I come in here every Sunday and hang out with and make stuff with. Pretty awesome. WeAreDenver is putting on an event on October 14th from 7 to 10 p.m. It is a costume ball. You should check it out. It's on Facebook. It should be pretty cool. I'm pretty giddy about it. Let's just say I like the weekend of October the 14th this year.
I'll be there, people. Come by.
Yeah, we're just gonna kind of wrap things up here. I'm gonna shout out everybody here. But before I do that, do you have anything you want to plug, man?
You know, just peace on earth, and that, you know, Denver Homeless Out Loud, they're out doing good stuff. The Harm Reduction Action Center is doing very cool stuff. So even if it's just $5, phone call, or, you know, some kind of letter in support, please do consider taking action. Thanks.
Yeah, it's important. These are people, you know. And yeah, So just shout outs to our crew today. Ryan Fu, producer extraordinaire. We have Samson, making sure everything is crisp, clean, and on the scene. And of course, always much love to the homie Rich, making sure we sound good too. I'm Nick G, and this has been the DoodleCast.